Hey guys, I'm Ubiru and welcome back to World of Warships. Today we'll be looking at the Tier 8 Japanese cruiser, the Mogami. Now there are some interesting things about the Mogami. The Mogami used to be a Tier 7 cruiser before the 0.3.1 update. It was pushed up to Tier 8 because of how powerful it was, but since that leap it has been buffed a little bit in terms of turning circle radius, and it is still a formidable ship. I have done a video on this ship in the past, not a full review per se, but I've done a battle in this ship to show you how good it is in terms of damage per minute, and it is fantastic with those 155mm guns. So the Mogami is probably the best ship in terms of stats, tier for tier in the game. The Mogami is much better than the American equivalent, the New Orleans, in almost every respect. It has a slight disadvantage in terms of maximum distance, but other than that it is much better. Okay, so let's get to the main stats of the Mogami. So the first stat of the Mogami is survivability, and this ship has 53 out of 100 score, 39,100 health. That is very good for a cruiser. The Miyoko, which has replaced this at Tier 7, which has now been pushed down, does have slightly more health. The Miyoko does have a large amount of health at Tier 7. This ship only has 100 less health than the Miyoko, but disregarding that, it moves very fast, it has fantastic guns. This ship is just a better ship than the Miyoko in almost every respect. In comparison to the New Orleans has a score of 49 out of 100 and a maximum health of 35,400. So the Mogami has the advantage in terms of overall survivability and health. Now the next stat is the most interesting in my opinion, and that is artillery firepower. Now the artillery firepower in this ship, you can have one of two loadouts. You can either choose the standard 155mm guns, or you can skip and go to the 203mm guns. Now the 203mm guns have high penetration, high average damage, but if you want to have this ship as a full DPM ship, destroying cruisers and destroyers in very quick succession, I recommend using the 155mm guns. So this ship has 5 turrets, and on those turrets it has 3 guns per turret, so that's a maximum of 15 guns on this ship. And I think that's the highest amount of these caliber guns per ship in the game. You do have things like the earlier tiered ships like the St. Louis, who has quite a lot of guns, but you can't fire all of them at once. With this ship you can fire all those guns on the same target. So we have 3 turrets at the front and 2 turrets at the back. These guns go to a maximum distance of 14.7 kilometers, which is quite good in comparison to some of the lower tiered ships, but not quite as good as the New Orleans, the American Tier 8 cruiser. This ship has a rate of fire of 6.0 rounds per minute, a turn time which is quite slow, I've noticed, which is 40 seconds for 180 degrees. The accuracy, the dispersion, is 134 meters. The maximum high explosive damage is 2,700, and the maximum AP damage is 3,300. The ship also has some secondary armament. It has 4x2 127mm guns, which act as both anti-ship and anti-plane guns. In comparison to the New Orleans again, I did mention that this has a slight disadvantage in terms of maximum distance. The New Orleans has a maximum gun range of 16.2, so they can shoot at you at ranges where you can't reach. The New Orleans has 3x3 203mm guns, so they have higher caliber guns. You can't choose the low caliber guns in the New Orleans. You're stuck with the 203mm guns. But they do high amounts of damage and high amounts of penetration. And they have a respectable rate of fire of 4.3 rounds per minute. And in the New Orleans you have a secondary armament of 8x1 127mm guns, so it's around the same sort of secondary armament capability, but the Mogami has a massive advantage in terms of how much damage per minute it can accomplish. This ship has a massive amount of potential damage. So the Mogami score of artillery is 58 versus the New Orleans 49. The next stat is torpedoes, and with all American cruisers from Tier 6 and above, with the exception of the Atlanta, they don't have torpedoes. With Japanese, though, they all have torpedoes, and this ship has some quite good torpedoes. It has 4x4 610mm torpedoes, so they are the bigger caliber torpedoes. We have a 47 score out of 100. These torpedoes go to a maximum range of 10 kilometers. We have 4x4, so 8 per side. The reload time is only 109 seconds. And the maximum damage of these torpedoes is 17,000 damage. That, with the good torpedo speed of 62 knots, makes this ship very formidable in terms of close combat situations. The problem with the torpedoes really in this ship is that they are back mounted. The problem really with back-mounted torpedoes is you can't use them offensively, you have to use them defensively. So you have to use them at a last moment, and when you pass an enemy, let's say you go full side on to an enemy, they pass you, then you fire your torpedoes. You can't really angle the torpedoes to engage enemies offensively, they're very much a defensive measure. But that's not a problem. Torpedoes in cruisers of this tier generally are just for defensive measures anyway. The next stat is anti-air capability. 34 out of 100. We have lots of small caliber and medium caliber guns spread across the ship, lots of 25mm guns, and of course we have those dual purpose guns which act as both anti-ship and anti-plane guns. This ship does have the ability that increases anti-air capability for a short while, same with all the other cruisers in the game with fairly good anti-air capability. This ship can shoot down planes, but not nearly as many as the New Orleans, which has a much better score as you would expect. The New Orleans, along with many of the other American ships, generally have a better anti-air capability. And the anti-air capability of the New Orleans is 53 out of 100. That, with the dual-purpose guns, makes the New Orleans a much better ship in terms of anti-air capability. And the next stat is maneuverability, and this ship has fairly good maneuverability, not very good turning circle radius, but it has a very, very good top speed. This ship goes to a maximum speed of 35 knots. That's pushing towards the fastest cruisers in the game, and pushing towards the slowest destroyers in the game, so 35 to 40 knots is an outstanding speed in World of Warships. This ship has a turning circle radius of 750 meters, so it does turn quite sluggishly, and it does have a rudder shift time of 9.3 seconds. That's alright, it's just this ship is very, very long, and you'd expect it to have a very high turning circle radius. It did have a slightly worse turning circle radius before 0.3.1, everything was buffed slightly, but it's still not very good. So the maneuverability is 72 out of 100 versus the New Orleans 67. Now the New Orleans has 33 knots maximum speed, 660 meters turning circle radius, and a 9-second rudder shift time. So this ship states that it has a better overall maneuverability score, but that really reflects its maximum speed, which of course is only 2 knots better than the New Orleans. It's not really a massive difference, but this thing can catch up with the New Orleans when it has the advantage in terms of range. So there's not a big difference there really, other than the New Orleans having a slightly better turning circle radius, rudder shift time, and a slower top speed. And the last stat is concealment. This ship has 63 out of 100. It's quite stealthy. Surface detectability range of 10.8 kilometers and air detectability range of 7.6 kilometers. This score is fairly similar to the New Orleans. The New Orleans has a 56 out of 100 score. The New Orleans has a 12.4 kilometers surface range and a 7.5 kilometers air range. So this ship has a slight advantage again over the New Orleans. The only major difference really between this and the New Orleans is the anti-air capability and the vast amount of firepower available on the Mogami. So in my opinion, the Mogami is definitely one of the best ships in the game. Irrespective of class, it is one of the best. This thing can take on battleships, it can take on destroyers, it can take on cruisers, it can pretty much take on whatever you're up against. When you fire high explosive with those guns, you can set people on fire very, very quickly, and then just fire over and over again, and the damage potential is massive, and it's definitely one of my favourite ships in the game at the moment. Okay, so let's get to the modules and credible upgrades of the Mogami. So the Mogami has quite a nice array of upgrades. We have 2 hull upgrades, 1 gunfire control system upgrade, and of course we have the increase in caliber of guns upgrade. Now the first hull upgrade gives you an increase in health of 3,600, increases the anti-air capability and maneuverability by a small amount. It says here the rudder shift time is decreased by 2.8 seconds. So that's the first upgrade you have to choose before you can unlock any of the others. Now the second upgrade I would choose is the gunfire control system. With the New Orleans having that range advantage over you, you need to increase your gun range as quickly as possible, and this increases that by 10% to a maximum range of 14.7 kilometers. And now you have a choice of either 203mm guns or the hull upgrade. Now I'll show you the 203mm gun upgrade. As soon as you put on the upgrade, you can see how the guns are. So here we are at the front. Instead of 3 barreled turrets like you do in the 155mm guns, with the 203mm guns, you only have 2 guns per turret. So at the front, we only have 6 guns, and at the back, we only have 4. So that's another reason why I chose the 155mm guns over the 203mm, because the damage output of that extra 5 guns really makes a difference. Now, the 203mm gun gives you a rate of fire decrease of 2.0 rounds per minute. That's another reason why I chose the 155. It does, however, have a decreased turn time of 10 seconds, You will notice if you play the 155mm guns that they are quite slow at turning. This decreases that by 10 seconds. You have a higher maximum high explosive damage of plus 600, and you have higher maximum AP damage of 1400. It does have a reduced artillery score of -7, but these 203mm guns penetrate more and they do more damage. But if you add up the guns and add up the damage, the 155mm guns are far better than the 203mm guns. So it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to unlock and try out the 203mm guns with their increased penetration and average damage. I unlocked it just to test out the penetration and damage in comparison to the 155mm guns. They're quite good guns, but what really makes the Mogami is the 155mm spam. So you can very easily ignore this upgrade and go straight for the hull upgrade and then the tier 9 Ubuki. So I would usually suggest you go for the hull upgrade, ignore the gun upgrade, and go straight for the Ubuki at tier 9. So the second hull upgrade increases anti-air capability again by +4. You have an extra 10 gun mounts. That's pretty much it, not an awful lot, which leads straight to the tier 9 Ubuki. You have no torpedo upgrades and no engine upgrades, but of course the engine goes to a maximum speed of 35 knots, which is a very high amount. And the torpedoes are good, they have very good damage, very good maximum range, very good speed, and fairly good rate of fire. Now I have chosen some credit point upgrades of this ship. The first one is the main battery modification 1, which is -20% to chance of magazine detonation, -20% to chance of critical damage to main batteries, and -20% to main battery repair time. I quite often choose this upgrade when I have lots and lots of guns which are very susceptible to being knocked out, such as these guns here. If the turrets get penetrated, the guns can be knocked out very, very easily. So the second upgrade I've chosen is the Gunfire Control System Modification 1, which is an increase in main battery firing accuracy. The gun accuracy of these guns is quite good, but you can always increase that further. The third credit point upgrade I've chosen is the Damage Control System Modification 1. Now this is a -3% chance of flooding and -5% chance of fire. In this ship you can survive, you see those torpedo bulges on the side there, you can survive some torpedo hits. This decreases the chance of flooding. And the fire. This is primarily for the fire, but also the flooding comes in handy too. People fire high explosive with this thing, the armor isn't too high. Unfortunately I don't have armor specifics at the moment, so I can't go into too much detail about armor, but I know for a fact from previous versions of the game, this ship doesn't have an awful lot of armor. So people fire high explosive with this thing will be set on fire, and this decreases that by 5% and flooding by 3% respectively. The fourth credit point upgrade I've chosen is the -20% to rudder shift time. Now this ship has a respectable rudder shift time of 9.3 seconds, but with that very poor turning circle radius, you want to decrease the rudder shift time more so you can turn faster. And the fifth upgrade I haven't chosen just yet. I could either choose this one here, which is the Concealment System Modification 1, which is -10% in detectability, or this one here, which is the Target Acquisition System Modification 1, which is +20% to maximum acquisition range. Now the acquisition range is spotting range essentially. This ship doesn't have a very good maximum range on guns, so I haven't chosen that for that particular reason. And the concealment is quite high in the ship, but I would probably choose this one over the acquisition range, mostly because of the disadvantage in maximum range. I can't afford this upgrade just yet. I did just buy the Iowa, so I am bleeding money, as you would expect. So this is the Mogami. The Mogami is a fantastic ship, one of the best cruisers in the game at the moment, in my opinion. It has fantastic firepower, definitely one of the best in the game tier for tier. It's a shame that these guns only go to 14.7 kilometers. It has fantastic torpedoes as an emergency weapon, okay anti-air capability, very good top speed and maneuverability, and good concealment. This ship is definitely one of the best cruisers in the game, in my opinion. Now, when this ship was pushed up from tier 7 to tier 8, I haven't noticed a huge amount of difference in terms of its ability, in terms of DPMs, so they haven't really nerfed many of the stats of the ship. In fact, it did receive a buff in terms of turning circle radius, so this ship was pushed up to tier 8 and still remains one of the best ships in the game. So that really shows how amazing this was at tier 7 prior to 0.3.1. Okay, so let's have a look at some gameplay. Okay, this is the Mogami, the tier 8 Japanese cruiser on Ocean Standard Battle. It says here test map, but this is a replay system, and the replay system is very early stages, so it is a bit buggy, but it does look okay. So on this map we have the advantage in terms of higher tier battleships versus the Izumo. The Izumo has very little armor, and they also have 3 Fusos, so we have the massive advantage in terms of having the North Carolina. This is okay matchmaking for the Mogami, but definitely not the best map of the bunch. The Mogami is best when you fire over rocks, around rocks, and use your torpedoes effectively around rocks as well to kill enemies. Now, it's a problem with this map in particular, mainly because your maximum gun range is only 14.7 kilometers, and And ships of a similar tier quite often have a bigger maximum distance. But when ships get within close distance of you, you can kill them very, very easily, irrespective of what map you're on. So I'm heading south here. This map is very big. The ocean map is one of the biggest in the game and the most realistic. Now, most conflicts in real life involving ships involved big ocean plains like this. This is definitely the most realistic map type in the game at the moment, but it is very, very large, so it's going to take me a little while to navigate around this map. I'm following the Oba, the Mahan, the two destroyers in front of me. Half my team, or more than half my team, is going left. This is more of a pincer movement when two halves of teams split into two, like so, and sort of cut around the enemy. Usually a lot of lemmings happens, a lot of following allies in this game, in maps like this. And as you notice, many of the enemy players are all going the same way. In fact, all of them are going the same way. They're all directing the same way, and that is the east of the map. Now, this is a big advantage for me and my allies around me, the two destroyers and the cruiser. That means we're mostly against enemies facing a different direction, with their guns a different direction, so we have the advantage of surprise attack, and hopefully we can farm some good damage. So there's a Fuso there at 19.5 kilometers away. The Fuso has quite a lot of armor. The high explosive shells of this ship, the Mogami, it doesn't really affect ships with high armor too well. It does set them on fire, which is good, but it doesn't do an awful lot of high explosive shell damage. There's a Mogami there and a Fuso as well. The Mogami is a better target to shoot at. Mogami is 14.5 kilometers away, but he's angled in such a way where if I fire a shot, he's sort of at an angle. So he's going away from the shot, and it's almost impossible for me to hit him at this distance. We both have maximum distances of around 14.7 kilometers. It's not going to hit at this distance. It's just a shame, really, that the Mogami has such a bad overall maximum distance on guns. The Fuso is now 15.2 kilometers away. It didn't take us very long to catch up. The speed of the ship is 35 knots, which is very fast for a cruiser. 14.5 now. He has some torpedoes heading his way, and there's a Mogami and the New York. Most of the enemy ships are all clustered up in the east of the map, having a nice fight with the allies in the north. So I'm firing a couple of shots at the Fuso. Fuso's stationary here for some reason. It seems like he's reversing. I fired the first shot to anticipate, to work out where he's going. 12 kilometers away, not a long distance. Firing a couple of high explosive initially to see what kind of damage we can do. Hopefully set them on fire. 2 lots of 900 damage. That's quite low for these guns. These guns, when you fire at lighter targets such as the cruisers, you can do a massive amount of damage. We set on fire there for another 900. Yeah, if you do a full broadside on destroyers, on cruisers with these guns in high explosive mode, you can do a substantial amount of damage. There we hit him for 3,000. We managed to penetrate something, and we did quite a lot of damage. 3,000's alright for these guns. Not the best, but not bad. Keep firing again. That time we hit him for 6 times, and no damage, unfortunately. He's only around 10 kilometers away, and that's the prime distance for him to fire at us. There they are. A full salvo, so I'm turning very sharply right here, decreasing speed, and we managed to avoid most of the shots, but he did knock out one of our guns. So firing again, only 700 damage. So at this point I'm thinking of switching to armor piercing, because armor piercing probably will be a bit more effective against the Fuso. The penetration of 155mm guns isn't that good, but you can hope to do a bit more damage with the base sort of armor piercing damage than just setting people on fire with very limited damage on high explosives. So we hit him there, first salvo for around 3,000, not bad. He set us on fire, knocked out a gun, knocked out torpedoes. He did fire high explosive there, which is a bit odd for a battleship. Battleships quite often fire armor piercing. And against the Mogami has some armor, not the best armor in the world. So shots going in again, 8.9 kilometers away. I'm getting very close at this point. He's moving to avoid the torpedoes. He's the only enemy in this area that is actually within 15 kilometers. Most of the other enemies are well out the way, all north, engaging my allies, and they're losing by a substantial amount. So he's only on a small amount of health left. He did set us on fire again with high explosive again. 7,000 health left. There's a Baltimore behind him now at 12 kilometers. The Baltimore has a fantastic overall DPM, one of the best cruisers in the game for DPM as well, and it has that advantage in terms of maximum distance. So thankfully the Baltimore isn't attacking us yet. We're going to fire one last salvo at the Fuso. In they go, knocked out a gun, set him on fire, and the fire took him out. So the Baltimore is now 11.7 kilometers away. For some reason he has his guns facing elsewhere, probably at the Oba behind me or the destroyer. If I was the Baltimore, I would definitely attack the ship which is the highest threat with the lowest amount of health, which is obviously me in this situation. We're firing a couple of high explosive now. We switch from armor piercing to high explosive. Hit him there for 2 times 1,800 nearly, set him on fire, quite a lot of damage. We have some more ships incoming. They've seen that their cap is in trouble, so they're coming back to defend. The Mogami is 7.5 kilometers away. He has his guns facing elsewhere again, so at the moment I am safe from enemy ships, other than the Cleveland. He just fired one salvo at 10 kilometers, but he did miss. We set the Mogami on fire. He only has 9,000 health left, an easy target, high explosive all the way. Probably the best armament really in this ship is high explosives. Nearly 7,000 damage there with just high explosives. Set him on fire. 2,500 health left. The Cleveland is also very low. 3,000 health. Last shot's going into the Mogami, and we finish the Mogami off. The Cleveland is now nearly 4,000 health at 9 kilometers away, so that's prime distance from these guns. Fung a full salvo. In they go, bit by bit. 1,900. Oh, we missed it. We set him on fire, but the Allied finished him off. That last 100 damage, so we could have got the kill there, but unfortunately we did not. And now there's a destroyer in front of me. Now the destroyer is a big threat. At this close distance, he can use his torpedoes to finish me off. He's very close, only 3 kilometers. I'm trying to get these guns around, but the guns turn very, very slowly. Trying to get them around. He's turning side onto me, so I know he's about to deploy his torpedoes. He's about to fire his torpedoes. He's very close distance now, only 1.5 kilometers. Got to get these guns around to finish him off. He's turning in front of my guns, firing a salvo. Finished him off. He fired his torpedoes, but they did miss. He probably fired them a bit too late. If he fired them a bit earlier, he would have easily have killed me with those high damaging torpedoes. So at this point in the game, we have 3 kills, 120 hits nearly, and now I have a choice of either attacking the New Mexico and the Pensacola, which is near our base in the corner, kind of stranded there, or go back and help my team with the Baltimore. The Baltimore is a big threat on the south. There's an Ober there and a cruiser. They're in a lot of trouble from the Baltimore. The Baltimore has a fantastic overall firepower and health pool, so it's a big threat, and I should probably go back and defend. Initially in this replay, I thought I could go back and put a couple of holes into the New Mexico. Before I looked at my map and I realized the Baltimore was a better target to shoot. He's only 15.3 kilometers away and he's facing towards me, so there's a small gap really between me and him. The Ober fired his torpedoes as a last defensive measure. He did miss. The Baltimore was about to finish him off, and there he goes. So it's just me and the destroyer versus the Baltimore. The Baltimore is only 13 kilometers away now. Going to fire a high explosive after this AP salvo. AP just to see how much damage it does, and if I should use AP again. In they go. 4,600 damage with AP isn't bad. Baltimore has quite a lot of armor. Going to fire high explosive now to hopefully set him on fire and kill him off. Shots going in. He only has 9,000 health left. We did miss that time. He did use his very good maneuverability to avoid those shots. Doing a couple of spread shots here. He's moving to avoid the torpedoes. Doing a couple of spread shots to hopefully get a good angle to hit him at least once. With these guns, you only need to hit him a couple of times with high explosive to set a target on fire. Firing again. He's only 11.5 kilometers away. He's using the repair button, which they have similar to battleships, which repairs them once they've taken damage. Shots are going in now. Knocked out one of his secondary guns, hit him for 900. The Baltimore has his guns facing elsewhere, and now he's going side on to us, which is a very bad idea to do against the Mogami. So hit him again there, over and over again, set him on fire, a couple of thousand damage. The average damage of these shells is quite high. 1,000 health left, he's on fire, couple more hits, and he's dead. 200, and we finished him off. So there's only one ship remaining now. The Pensacola was knocked out, the New Mexico at 16 kilometers away. Now this is the late stages of the match. I'm not really hoping to get an awful lot of damage from now on. I'm going to fire anyway when I get within distance. The New Mexico only has 9,000 health left. Shots going in, 2,000 health left. He's repairing, but he is going down. Lots of allies are firing him at this point, and he was finished off. In that game, you managed to get 149 hits. We set 8 targets on fire. We destroyed 1 plane, destroyed 4 ships, and we did 1 critical damage. So this has been the Mogami, the Tier 8 Japanese cruiser. The Mogami is definitely one of the best cruisers in the game at the moment. It is very overpowered, even when it was pushed up to Tier 8 from Tier 7. It is still an outstanding ship. You can fire over and over again with a very high rate of fire of these guns, set people on fire, and do a massive amount of damage at the same time. You also have very good maneuverability with that maximum speed of 35 knots, good torpedoes in terms of defensive capability, and good health and survivability. This ship is definitely one of the best cruisers in the game. So this ship leads on to the Ibuki at Tier 9. I've heard a lot about the Ibuki. It does seem very, very similar to the Mogami with the 203mm gun setup. There's not a huge difference between these two ships. I would even go as far as saying the Mogami, the Tier 8 ship, is better than the Tier 9 Ibuki. It has higher health, better guns, and slightly worse maximum distance on guns. The Mogami is a formidable ship and definitely worth your experience and credits. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.